The voice wasn't calm or professional. It was hostile, laced with something uglier than authority. Captain Jasmine Wallace blinked up into the harsh Arizona sun, her Mercedes SUV parked neatly on a suburban street in Glendale under a jacaranda tree. Engine off, seatbelt on. Just moments before, she'd been texting her husband about Thai versus tacos for dinner. None of that mattered now. The white female officer at her window wore aviators and the smug authority of someone used to obedience. Her nameplate read, Maddox. License and registration, now. Jasmine's voice was steady as steel. Is there a reason I'm being stopped? Suspicious behavior, the officer shot back. Got a call about a black female loitering, peeking into driveways. That ring a bell? Jasmine tilted her head, taking in the officer's aggressive stance. She wore a tailored charcoal pantsuit, her badge hidden beneath the blazer. You pulled me over for sitting in my car? Officer Maddox's eyes narrowed behind her sunglasses. Are you refusing to cooperate? With slow, deliberate care, Jasmine reached into her glove compartment. Across the street, a sprinkler sputtered to life. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, but by her window, the air seemed to freeze. What's your name? Jasmine asked quietly. Officer Kelly Maddox, and I'd be careful with that tone. She leaned closer to the window. You planning to let me search this car? Maddox stepped back, her breath heavy with the scent of gum and arrogance. You bet I am, and if I have to strip search you right here on this street, I will. This wasn't protocol. This was raw power, unchecked and ugly. Jasmine swallowed, not from fear but to focus. Then do it by the book. Maddox barked into her radio with theatrical authority. Dispatch, code 6, backup requested, possible narcotics. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. You haven't even asked what I'm doing here. I don't need to. I can smell it on you. Weed, cocaine, whatever you people do. You people. The phrase landed like a slap across the face. I'm stepping out, Jasmine said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Hands where I can see them. She obeyed. Her movements were clean, professional, practiced. Maddox couldn't see it yet, but she'd already lost control of this situation. Pop the trunk, Maddox ordered. Jasmine pressed the release button. The officer went rummaging like a raccoon through garbage, tossing aside grocery bags and personal items until she suddenly froze. A slow, predatory smile spread across her face. Well, well, cocaine, she smirked, holding up a small plastic bag like a trophy. Guess dinner's canceled tonight. That's not mine. Tell it to the judge, sweetheart. Jasmine's gaze didn't waver. Her voice remained calm, almost conversational. You just made a very big mistake. Maddox scoffed, her confidence growing. You think anyone's going to believe you over me? They won't have to. What's that supposed to mean? It's all being recorded. For the first time, Officer Maddox's smirk began to waver. Body cam, dash cam, Jasmine continued, her voice gaining strength. 2 more cameras inside this vehicle, and you're conducting an illegal search on private property. A heavy, unnatural silence fell over the street. Neighbors peeked through blinds. A delivery driver paused mid-step. Even the barking dog went quiet, as if sensing the shift in power. Then Maddox snapped. Take off your clothes, right here, right now. Jasmine didn't flinch. Search me if you want, but do it legally. Maddox's voice turned vicious. I'll have you in handcuffs by sunset. Let's see how that fancy attitude helps when you're... Still want me on my knees? Jasmine cut her off. In front of your dash cam? Maddo. X's jaw twitched. She doubled down, grabbing Jasmine's wrist roughly. I said on your knees. Jasmine leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. You're making history, Officer Maddox. Just not the kind you'll be proud of. Maddox yanked open the driver's side door, her fury boiling over. She barked into her radio, only for it to crackle back with an unexpected voice. Unit 142, status check. What's your 1020? She blinked, momentarily confused. Field search in progress. Suspect is, under suspicion for... Still want to pretend you're in control here? Jasmine took a step forward. You think you're smart? You people always think... The mask was cracking now, revealing the ugliness beneath. Jasmine reached into her inner jacket with deliberate slowness. She pulled out something that caught the Arizona sun and threw it back like fire. A gold badge. Internal Affairs. The nameplate gleamed. Captain J. Wallace. Maddox staggered backward as if she'd been punched. Wait, what? You're not... This isn't... You're not just being watched, Jasmine said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You're being evaluated. This isn't fair. But fairness had never been the point. The heat of that Arizona street began to fade, but Jasmine's mind was still gripped by the cold clarity of purpose. Standing before Officer Maddox had only been the latest test, a test she'd been training for her entire life. It had started on a cracked sidewalk in Georgia when Jasmine was just 9 years old. She clutched jelly beans in her small fist, tears she wasn't allowed to shed burning behind her eyes. Her father, Marcus, stood in handcuffs, sweat and shame staining his sanitation uniform, while a white cop paraded him around like a common thief. No charges were ever filed, just humiliation, just a little girl watching her father's dignity disappear in front of their neighbors. That night, she made the vow that would shape the rest of her life. They'll never look at me like that, and if they look at someone else that way, I'll make them regret it. She kept that promise like a religion. In high school, Jasmine didn't just raise her hand to answer questions. She raised it to challenge injustice. She wore her natural curls like armor, joined the debate team to master confrontation, and studied the system not to follow it blindly, but to understand its every flaw and weakness. College sharpened her further. She majored in criminal justice, minored in psychology, and interned at a precinct that taught her more about corruption than any textbook ever could. She saw how easily black boys became suspects, how complaints became jokes in locker rooms, and how authority could cloak abuse in paperwork and procedure. She reported an officer once for excessive force. He was quietly reassigned to another district for unrelated reasons, they claimed. But Jasmine had learned something vital that day. Power responds to proof, not protest. The police academy didn't want her. Chip on your shoulder, they said during her interview. Steal, she replied. She graduated top of her class, a black woman in a sea of skepticism, with her eyes set not on acceptance, but on reform. By age 42, she was Captain Jasmine Wallace of Internal Affairs. She hadn't climbed the ladder to belong. She'd climbed it to break it, then rebuild it properly. They tried to box her in, transferred her to dead-end assignments, isolated her from the inner circles of power. But Jasmine played the long game. While others smiled and nodded in meetings, she documented everything. While they cracked jokes in the break room, she collected patterns of abuse. Her office, tucked away in a forgotten basement corner, became a war room. The first officer she took down had 18 years on the force and a dozen buried complaints. She unearthed the silenced footage, found the whistleblower they'd buried in paperwork, and made her case airtight. The officer was fired. Jasmine was relocated again. So she built a list. It started on post-it notes, names, dates, patterns of behavior. Over time, it evolved into something more comprehensive, something undeniable. Officers who wore badges but moved like predators through the communities they were sworn to protect. Jasmine hunted them in silence. When she finally got the footage on Officer Davenport, charming, press-friendly, and dangerous, she didn't hesitate. A janitor had found a flash drive under a bench in the precinct parking lot. No note, just 3 words written on the drive. He's hurting people. Stop him. The video showed Davenport slamming a 17-year-old into the side of a patrol car. The boy screamed for his mother. Davenport laughed. Jasmine didn't sleep that night. She built the case with surgical precision, documenting every angle, every witness, every piece of evidence until it was bulletproof. When Davenport fell, the headlines exploded across the city. He resigned in disgrace. No pension, no whispers of redemption, no quiet transfer to another department. Jasmine didn't gloat, but in the courtroom, when she met the boy's mother's eyes full of disbelief that someone had actually listened, actually cared, she simply nodded. She had kept her promise, but it came at a price. Slashed tires in the precinct parking lot. Anonymous threats slipped under her office door. Whispers behind her back in the hallways. The cleaner, some officers muttered when she passed. She preferred the reckoning. Her silence terrified them more than any shouting ever could. She had known about Officer Kelly Maddox long before Maddox ever pulled her over. She'd been watching her for months, studying the complaints that got swept aside, the body cam footage that mysteriously went missing, the pattern of uncooperative suspects who all happened to look like Jasmine. That traffic stop wasn't a coincidence. It was the final page of a case file Jasmine had spent over a year building. She hadn't baited Maddox. Maddox had walked straight into her own trap. Now, as the Internal Affairs SUV drove Maddox away in handcuffs, Jasmine sat alone in her car. She reached into the glove compartment, Not for documents this time, but for a folded letter she kept tucked behind the owner's manual. Her father's handwriting had faded with time, but the words were still clear. Justice has to be louder than hate. Make sure it is, baby girl. She stared at the letter for a long moment, then carefully placed it back and started the engine. There were still names on her list, and Captain Jasmine Wallace wasn't done.